Hi, today we're talking about addictions. Now, when we talk about addiction, the word addiction is defined in two ways in the dictionary. One, physically dependent on a particular substance. Two, devoted to a particular interest or activity. Now, keeping both these definitions in mind, and as we look at addictions, addictions are many. And there are, further words that I would like to use to kind of explain addiction. Those are words like fixation, craving, habit, dependence, bondage. These are words that would kind of add a little more flavor to the understanding of the word addiction. Now, we wonder why people get into addiction. There are a lot of reasons. People have various kinds of causes that cause them to get into addictions. The most common being peer pressure. When a teenager grows up, his peers are into habits and they kind of push him into it. Uh, the person gets into addiction. Now, various other reasons. Curiosity can be one, experimenting, the influences of the media itself can be causes for a person to get into addiction. Now, once the person gets into addiction, it becomes very difficult to leave and becomes so much a part of his life that everything about his life changes. There are uh, so let me talk about the four characteristics that guide a person with addictions. Firstly, is that there is a loss of control. Now, you look at any addiction, any person struggling with any kind of addiction, you will find that there is a loss of control. Now, going back to many cases that have happened in our nation, the underlying problem would always be there's a loss of control. You look at accidents that happen, most of the time is in the influence of addictions. You go into central jail and talk to people who've committed murder. And as you talk to them, you will find them saying, I didn't want to do it. I don't know how it happened. I wish I didn't do it. And as you probe further, you'll find that there's been an addiction with the person and that has caused them to do it. So that's the first characteristic. The second characteristic is that there is a compulsive preoccupation. For somebody who's struggling with addiction, they just can't think of anything else other than how will I get my next fix. That's the second characteristic. And then there's a third characteristic. Now, most of us who don't smoke have seen a cigarette packet and we've seen what's written on it. On a cigarette packet, it's written smoking causes cancer or smoking is injurious to health. But for a person who's smoking, have they seen it? Yes, of course. But they will still continue to use even though they know the negative consequences. For a person who's struggling with sex addiction, as he walks into a red light area. Now, I have worked in the red light area in Delhi and in Calcutta. And in old Delhi, as you drive in, you have these huge hoardings which say, beware, HIV and AIDS, it will kill you. You think these people who drive in there can't see it? They can, but they still continue to do because it's a characteristic. They will continue to do even though they know the negative consequences. And then there's a fourth characteristic, and that is there are suicidal tendencies. And very sadly, a lot of them are successful. Now, having said this, there are various types of addictions. There's addictions to substances. Substances are of many kinds. There's addictions to prescription drugs. People abuse medicines. There's alcohol, which is a huge problem today with men, women, and even children. There is addiction to sex. There's gambling. There is work addictions, exercise addictions, and the list goes on. In fact, world over, there's listed more than 100 addictions. Today, gadget addiction has become a big problem. And addiction continues on. So how do you kind of get out of addiction? And my suggestion is this: don't start. Don't start. Don't take the first puff. Now, what happens when you don't take the first puff? You don't take the second puff. But sounds like a joke. But think about it. Yeah? Now, if you don't take the first puff, you definitely wouldn't take cover at all. But some of you might be saying, what are you talking about first puff and second puff? I've had so many puffs. Make it your last today. I tell you a story of a young man that came and stayed with us a few years back. He was from Manipur, and he had severe addictions. Came, stayed with us, got out of his addictions, went back and continued to smoke again. And he would smoke a lot. Now, this guy, one day he slipped and fell in the bathroom. His head hit the tap and he died on the spot. And so, of course, there was the postmortem procedure and a police case and all that. And I was there with the doctor that was doing the postmortem. And what they did was they opened up the skull, and his brain had patches of black. And that was nicotine from the smoking that he had. And the doctor at the postmortem was saying, now over time, you will have like a black brain with patches of white. And that's the damage that nicotine does. I'll tell you another story. I had a friend who used to eat pan parag. Now, pan parag is something that you very easily get in shops. You know, if a shop doesn't have anything else, they'll have that. Small kids could go buy it. Now, this guy used to eat pan parag, and this is during my school days. A few years later, we heard he was one day brushing his teeth, and the brush just came through. Now, we're talking about something that's so easily available. Think about it. What about these other things are not so easily available? They are dangerous. And so here's the start. Don't touch. Don't experiment. Don't try it out. Okay? And if you have, and if you've got into it, seek professional help. Because the truth is, for somebody who's struggling with addiction, he cannot stop on his own. He does need help. And we as professionals are willing to help you. We would love to come and see how we can stand with you and bring you out of the addiction into a beautiful life that is there for you. Now, addictions can leave you completely destroyed. You will lose everything. You will have no aim in life. All that you can think about is how would you get your next fix from. Later on, I'm going to be sharing my story, and you will see how this is so true, how this works. Now, what I've told you is just the tip of the iceberg. Addiction is a huge topic. And to put it really into a few minutes is in that sense difficult. But here's the crux. If you've started with something, you're experimenting with something, and you're saying, I'll be fine after college. I'll be fine after a few years. Oh, I know when to control. I know when to stop. That's the biggest lie. You cannot be in control. Remember the first characteristic? Loss of control. You will lose control. And even before you know it, your life will be a mess. Let me tell you this. Your life is very valuable. Your life is very precious. And don't let addiction destroy your life.